Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're dipping in the acid. Alright, so these are the parts here that we're going to put in the acid, and we're just going to have to see what we get. I don't know. We have two different types of acid we're going to use. We're going to start with the not so mean stuff, and if we need to, we'll work our way up to the meaner stuff. So anyhow, we're going to get out to the yard and get at it.
Alright, so we're out in the driveway now, and the first thing I'm going to do is clean up all the parts. I'm going to use acetone. As I've said in other videos, I generally get the professional nail remover 100% acetone, and then I use that bottle until it goes empty, and then I go to the hardware store and get a bottle of acetone, a big bottle, and fill up the smaller bottle as needed. But you want to clean all of your parts so you don't have any oil on them that would cause a resist, someplace where the acid wouldn't do its job. So we're just going to clean them all up, and from there we'll get the acid out in just a minute. With everything cleaned up now, it's time to get the acid out, and we're using ferric chloride. And the ferric chloride is one of the easier acids to deal with. It's easy to neutralize and easy to clean up. So we're going to fill up this plastic cup. And thanks Rib Grib for the plastic cup. Those work really well for this if you've got shorter pieces of metal. And cap her back off, and then we'll get the parts down in the acid. And do better than me. I got to putting things in the acid and decided to drop them in there, and I got some acid on my arm. Didn't burn me, but if I had been using some hydrochloric or something meaner, I might have got myself burned. So learn from my mistakes. Set your things down in the acid rather easily. Don't just let them plop down in there. So anyhow, with them all in the acid, we're going to set a timer for about 15 minutes, and we'll be back to get a look at them. Okay, 15 minutes has elapsed. We're going to pull these out and get a look at them. Dip them in a little water so we can get the acid off of them and see what we have. And those parts have just turned kind of gray. We haven't really broke through the finish that Buck had on them yet. And they really didn't have a major finish on them, but they had smoothed them enough that it's going to take another round of acid. So we're going to stick them back in there and give them another 15 minutes. Alright, so after 30 minutes in the ferric chloride, let's get a look at what we've got. The blade itself is starting to turn. We're starting to get some darker grays in it. I'm still not real happy with it, and I'm getting impatient. So I think what we're going to do is I'm going to run in the house and neutralize all this stuff, and then we're going to go at it with some slightly more aggressive acid. Mostly because, as you'll see here, whenever this bar comes out, and I clean it off, these are just really staying gray. They're not really turning at all. So I'm going to try some muriatic, and we'll see what happens. I neutralized all the parts, and that's what we're getting. The blade's starting to come around, but the rest of the parts I'm not real happy with. So I'm going to move along to muriatic acid, and what I'm going to do here, I end up losing light and couldn't film part of this, but I'm just going to run it in and out of the muriatic until I'm somewhat happy with it, and it ended up being about another 25 or 30 minutes. This 154 cm and whatever they made the back strap and the pocket clip out of are some pretty tough stuff. But anyhow, it all went down in here, and we'll get to the rolling next. Alright, so if you ever wanted to do stone washing, this is one way to do it. This is a Thumbler's tumbler that was bought years ago for one of my daughter's projects, and I used it some for various things. And what we have here in the barrel is some polishing rocks and some river rocks. Our first run here for about 45 minutes is to get a good scratch pattern on the parts. And then we'll move along from there with a couple of polishing processes that I do. And my setup and the way I do things is a little different from other people. I have my stuff in the rocks a lot longer than most people. Anyhow, I'm going to load this thing up and then we'll have it in there for about 45 minutes. So I'm off to watch an episode of Forged in Fire, and we'll come back out and look at them here in just a minute. Alright, for the second part of this, we're going to bring the ballistol out. We'll use that here in a minute. But first, we're going to get them out and get a quick look and see where they're at. Remember, this part of the process is just to get some scratch pattern on the various pieces. And back in they go. Maybe we'll check that one. And it really just looks gray, but we're going for broke here. Once we've gave them a little look, we're going to squirt the ballistol in there. And the ballistol lubes this up so that it starts a polishing process. We still have the river rocks in there for another 45 minutes, but it starts to smooth things out a little bit. It's part of a two-step process I've been using, and we'll get to the next part of the process in about another 45 minutes. Alright, back at it again, and this time you'll notice I'm wearing the nitrile gloves because that ballistol makes a nasty slurry in there, and it's kind of just gritty and gross. So, didn't really want to get it on my hands and have to get it all cleaned off of there. And as you'll see there it is. It's kind of a mud, really. We call it a slurry, though, because that sounds better than saying, hey, there's some mud in there. But anyhow, as we get the parts cleaned off, you'll be able to see that we're starting to get some patterning on there, and it's actually looking pretty good. So from this end of the process, we're going to wipe everything off a little bit, and then we're going to go into our final section of the process here in just a moment. Okay, now we've swapped barrels. This little barrel doesn't have any of the river rocks in it. It's just the ceramic polishing compound, and it's about a little less than half full. So it gives the parts a good tumble still, but it's the ceramics rubbing against them, giving them a bit of a polish as they go through this one. And for this one, I'm going to leave those parts in there overnight, and I don't really measure amount of time. You know, it could be 8-10 hours, could be fewer, but I just want them to be in there overnight and be in there for 4 or 5 hours at least. And if they end up in there for 12 or 13 hours with these polishing compounds, it's not that big a deal. And I did spray a little bit of ballistol in there, so we've got some lube. I left some parts off of a CRKT knife in one of these things. Forgot it for the weekend, so the tumbler ran all weekend. You lost the edge off the knife, of course, but you're going to lose the edge anyhow doing this. But otherwise, with those polishing stones in there, it didn't eat up so much of the knife that I couldn't put it together. In fact, you couldn't even really tell that it had, but it had a really nice, hard, kind of almost a polished coat over it whenever it was done. So this can come out really nice. So from here, we're going to leave it overnight, and I'll catch up back up with you in the morning. So here it is the next morning. We're going to stop the tumbler, and we're going to pull out the parts and see what we got. Hopefully it came out really nice. If I get the right barrel. I, of course, didn't get the right barrel. So, whenever we open this one, let's see what we get. And there we go. We got a nice finish on the blade. And you know what, guys? You're just going to have to wait till we get to the desk to see the rest of it. So, we'll be at the desk here in just a moment.
Alright guys, I haven't done final cleanup on these yet, but this is basically our final result. We get kind of a dark gray stone wash out of it, and I leave things in that final tumble a little longer than most people do because I like to see that pattern become fairly consistent. I don't like the big splotchy patterns that some people get on their blades. So that's what we come out with, and even these came out a lot better than I figured we were going to get. They're still very gray, but we do have a nice stone wash pattern on them if we look really close. So everything turned out pretty good. I'm really digging what happened with the pocket clip. That came out really nice, got kind of a stone washed, worn look to it. And our other parts here, we just did those to keep the look consistent throughout the knife, and they did get kind of a nice worn look to them as well. Anyhow guys, I really appreciate you watching. We've got at least one more segment with this knife, and then we'll be done with it, and at that point, we're not going to give it away, but you're going to have the opportunity to own this one. So, stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.